Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie recounts his marriage to June, a hard-working woman he admired. Initially, June supported him when he lost his job, but her attitude changed, and he discovered she was having an affair with her boss. He exposed her infidelity, leading to her losing her job and their divorce. He reflects on the pain caused by June's betrayal and hopes to move on, wary of love. Now let's get into the story. My name is Cole and I was married to my ex-wife, June, for 2 years. Right from the first time I met June, I knew her to be a go-getter and she had her way of being exceptional at anything she did. The first time we met was at work as recruits, and within months she got promoted because of her hard work and dedication. About a year later, she left our company because she got a better offer. But there were rumors that she had a fallout with one of our bosses, but because June and I were close friends, I never believed anything they said after she left. After June left our company, we remained in touch, and even though I felt she was out of my league, I still liked her. One of the things that pulled me closer to her was her intelligence. She had an answer for everything, even the dumbest questions, and she was one of our best. About a year after June left for a better company, we got closer to each other, and we were almost like male and female besties. We were so close that she told me about everything happening in her life at work, the guys asking her out, and so on. I did the same, but I never shared personal details about myself. Unlike me, June was an open book. She didn't need to know you so well to tell you about her childhood. In the process of being so close, I fell in love with her, and when I professed my feelings to her, she admitted that she liked me too. Eventually, we dated and ended up marrying after a year. Being married to June felt good, and even though we fought and argued a lot of times, there was nothing we couldn't fix. Aside from our fights and arguments, every other thing was great with us. We looked after each other, supported and pushed ourselves to become better versions. On my end, I provided for June and took full responsibility for rent, groceries, gas, and other bills, and occasionally, June would contribute to it. This was because there was a business idea she was working on, and we had an agreement that she would push whatever she earned to it for a couple of months, and I would single-handedly take care of us. Unfortunately, after 13 months of our marriage, I was laid off from my organization. It was a huge surprise and changed many things at home. For starters, I could not afford to pay rent, buy groceries, pay bills, or do the things I used to do before because I had a minimal amount of savings. And when that was exhausted, I had to depend on June to take care of the house until I got back on my feet. I submitted applications to multiple organizations, and I didn't get any positive response for months. I even tried doing menial hourly jobs for a week, but it felt so out of place, and the pay was so low that even if I worked 50 hours a week for 4 weeks, it would be nothing compared to how much I earned. So I quit and focused more on applying for my kind of work. Around the same time I was jobless, I noticed that June's attitude changed a lot. Greatly. She no longer talked to me with respect. At every slightest provocation, she would remind me that she was taking care of the house. This hurt every time she said it. The first time we argued about me not making dinner for her on time, she said it in anger, and I believed she was stressed and exhausted. I even apologized to let peace reign, but after that, she mentioned it every day. Whether I did something wrong or not, she would always find a way to mock me for my joblessness and remind me that she was the one taking care of the house and paying all the bills. Also, it didn't end with the insults. Our intimacy reduced too, and she didn't even let me touch her. Every time I tried, she rudely turned me down or claimed she had to sleep early, so she would go to work on time the following day. And because I wasn't working, I took over the full responsibility of cleaning, cooking, doing the laundry, and other things we used to do together. I'll admit I was hurt and heartbroken when she treated me and acted that way, and even after I got a job, things did not go back to how they used to be between us. Eventually, I was able to find a job. Although the pay was not as good as my first job, it was better than doing nothing. With my new job, things were back on track for me, but our relationship was sour from there. After I broke the news of my new job, she became nicer and apologized for everything she said to me. She even said she didn't need to be rude, but she only encouraged me not to get comfortable with my joblessness. Despite everything she said, I still loved her and hoped we could work things out. I also forgave her for all the ill things she had said to me and the terrible treatment. On her end, I had seen a couple of improvements, but it wasn't like before, and I believed everything would be back to normal with time. But I was wrong. Despite having a new job, June and I were still distant. She only allowed me to touch her whenever she was in a good mood, and she became more engrossed with work and barely had time for me. It got to the point where I was so tired of our marriage, and I tried as much as I could talk to her, but everything I said was ignored. One day, I wanted to borrow her laptop to do something quick since I had forgotten mine at the office, and as soon as I turned it on, I got a notification from her bank. I shouldn't have checked her earnings since we were no longer close, but I was curious how much she earned. She had recently been promoted, and she never mentioned how much she was making, and to my greatest surprise, when I checked, it was a lot. So much that I wondered how it was possible, and as I did some further investigation to see how much extra it was for her previous salary, I stumbled upon something that revealed a bitter truth. In the past few months, June's transactions showed she had been making strange purchases, including payment for hotel rooms in a particular 5-star hotel, and the moment I saw that, I knew something was wrong. Out of instinct, I printed out copies of the strange expenses, and I cleared every trace that I had touched her laptop. I could not continue with what I wanted to do because I couldn't stop thinking. The following day, when June woke up, she told me she would be going out of town for a 2-day business meeting and coming home on Monday morning. I knew everything was wrong with her business meeting because she barely worked on weekends, so I pretended everything was cool and kissed her goodbye. Shortly after she left, I followed her, and she went to the same hotel from her transactions. When she arrived, a man I recognized as her boss from work welcomed her. They kissed and went into the hotel together. Luckily, I had my phone camera ready and took clear shots of them kissing outside June's car and him wrapping his hand around her waist as they walked into the hotel. Saying I was heartbroken is just an understatement. First, I could not believe that June was cheating on me with her boss, and while I was sulking in my broken state, everything made sense. The reason she earned so much monthly and got 3 promotions in the space of a year was because she was doing her boss. Yet she called herself my wife. Aside from being heartbroken, I was so mad and I wanted to pay her back for hurting me that way. So as soon as I got home, I did some digging and sent everything I'd gathered to her company, and I waited for the volcano to erupt. On Monday morning, she returned as she told me, but she met her bags out on the porch. I told her to her face that I knew she was cheating on me and our marriage was over. Instead of begging as I expected, she picked her stuff, murmured words I didn't hear, and drove off. At that time, I'm guessing her company did not reach out to her yet because when she was kicked out of work, she called me and cried over the phone like a child who lost her candy. Not to sound like a sadist, but I enjoyed listening to her cry, and I wished she had gotten worse. After she realized that she no longer had her job and her relationship with her sugar daddy was out in the open, she tried to come back to me, but it was too late. I contacted a divorce lawyer, and shortly after that, we divorced and I moved on with my life. As for her boss, the last time I heard, he was money laundering. He was also responsible for the increase in June's salary, and it was discovered that June was not his only sugar baby. He had a few others in the company. Now that I think of it, I can't help but believe that June was having an affair with one of our bosses in our former company, which was why she was sacked. She hurt me so much, and I'm even afraid to fall in love again. After we divorced, I have not seen her anymore, and I hope I don't. She deserves all the misery in the world, and I pray she gets enough of it. Today's second story. In this story, OP was married for 20 years. He cherished his wife and their 4 children. Their life shifted drastically after he survived a severe car accident, resulting in partial paralysis. Despite his unwavering support during her miscarriage, She neglected him post-accident and started an affair. Discovering her betrayal, he confronted her at his birthday party and filed for divorce, securing custody of their children. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I had been married for 20 years. I genuinely thought that I found the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and I was very thankful for her. We met through mutual friends and hit it off. My buddy kept telling me that he knew someone that I would get along with, and he was right. When we got together, it wasn't an official date by any means. We were just hanging out at my friend's house playing some board games. My wife was being weirdly competitive, and I thought it was adorable, so I ended up asking her out after. We had a lot in common, and we really enjoyed spending time together. Marriage was a no-brainer for us when it came time for it. We both wanted a family. We wanted that classic white picket fence life. We were young when we got married because we wanted to start a family. My wife was adamant about not wanting to be an old grandmother, which I thought was kind of funny. She wanted to be able to keep up with children and grandkids. Over the years, we had 4 children. About 10 years ago, we thought that we wanted to have one more child and we were going to call it there. The 4 kids that we had were amazing, but my wife really wanted a daughter. It was a stressful time in our marriage because getting pregnant was difficult. It was all the more stressful when my wife miscarried about 3 months after we found out she was pregnant. The entire family was broken about it. Even though we were upset, we all stayed together and we honored the unborn child that my wife lost. My wife took it harder than anybody else in the family, but no matter what she said or did, I was there to help her. The reason I mention this is because when the shoe was put on the other foot, my wife was completely absent from me. Last year, I was in a really bad car accident and I broke many bones in my body. All of the doctors said that it was a miracle that I survived. Even though I survived, there are some things in my life that will never be the same. I'm paralyzed from the waist down 3 months, thanks to spinal damage that I took. Before I recovered some, I had 2 broken arms and a broken neck. I could hardly do anything on my own. After the accident, I needed the support of my family to help me function. I could think and feel and talk, but I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. This is where the vows in sickness and in health really come into play. When my wife was struggling after the miscarriage, I was there every step of the way. When I literally couldn't feed myself, she would stay away from me and leave my children to take care of me. It took quite some time and a fair amount of rehabilitation for me to get to where I am today. I'm going to be wheelchair-bound for the rest of my life, which is something that I've been getting used to. Once I was able to get out of bed and roam around the house more, I started to notice some things were off. Aside from her avoiding me like the plague, she was very secretive about a lot of things going on in her life. For example, when she would go grocery shopping, she would be gone for 4 hours. When she got a phone call, she would answer it secretly and excuse herself to take the call outside. The entire time we had been married, she never did anything like that. On top of that, she had been getting very into her appearance. She wore makeup everywhere she went. She made sure her hair was nice and she dressed up. I didn't understand why a 20-minute trip to the grocery store required all of that, but I didn't say anything. While I was bedridden, I had been stewing over some of my feelings for her not taking care of me. I felt like she abandoned me and I had a lot of issues with that. Whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she would just shut down. So, eventually, I stopped. One night, she was supposed to be at her sister's house, helping her pack up some old things from their parents. When she left, she told me she was only going to be gone for a few hours and that she would be back in time to cook dinner. Our kids weren't really cooking at the time. Our oldest was 17 and he had a job that he worked at most nights, and the others were less than 13. None of them had really developed many cooking skills in their brief time on Earth. I couldn't cook in my condition, so we kind of relied on my wife to be there to cook for us. Time went on and my wife didn't show up. I started to get worried, so I called her and she didn't answer her phone. I called her sister and asked her if she was there, and she told me that she was. She mentioned that my wife had been drinking some wine and she ended up passing out on the couch. I was annoyed at the idea that she would just sleep over at our sister's house without saying anything, but I was glad she was safe. We ended up having to splurge and order dinner that night. which we had really been trying to avoid because we were on a tight budget since I couldn't work. The following day, my wife came back home and she looked like a mess. I made some jokes about how she must have had a real problem, rough night drinking, but I didn't want to cause any issues if she was feeling ill or hungover. It wasn't even that big of a deal. At least it wasn't until it happened again. The second time it happened, it was a very similar situation. I was understandably annoyed and frustrated that my wife had let something like that happen twice. I could understand every now and then spending the night at her sister's and sharing a few glasses, but getting belligerently drunk to the point that you pass out is an entirely different story. It felt immature and negligent to me. With everything that had been going on, I really started to suspect that my wife was up to something else. I had no reason not to believe she wasn't at her sister's house when she told me, but I thought more about the extra hours when she was supposed to be grocery shopping or the superfluous errands she would run. If one day when she went to the grocery store, I swapped phones with her. We had the same phone and my wife, for some strange reason, refused to put a case on hers. So while she had her back turned, I took the case off of my phone and put it on hers so she grabbed my phone and think that it was her own. Everything went according to plan, and she walked out of the house with my phone in her purse. I knew she was far enough away. I unlocked her phone and started looking through it. I found way more dirt on my wife than I ever thought I would have. I was honestly in disbelief when I saw how many other men she was talking to. She had downloaded a dating app on her phone and was talking to several men on that. In her bio and a lot of the messages, she mentioned being recently divorced and just looking for a good time. She gave her number out to a lot of different guys, and they exchanged pictures and flirty messages. It was clear from the context and the messages that she had met up with several of them. What struck me most of all in the messages was seeing one from somebody that I knew from work. I was humiliated to see that they had been together. He messaged my wife when he saw her and said he was sorry that we had been divorced, mentioning that he didn't know anything about it. My wife lied and told him that it was very recent and they were trying to keep it quiet. They both then confessed that they had been attracted to each other for quite some time. The guy from my work was married to another one of my coworkers. Everyone in the office was married, so seeing him on a dating app was a major red flag. The most heartbreaking realization of all of it was seeing that she had started messaging these guys about a week after my accident. She hadn't been there for me at all to help me recover. Instead, she was going around behind my back and screwing around with all these other guys. I was irate when I found all of this out. She had completely forsaken our wedding vows and treated me as if I were gum on the bottom of her shoe. I gave 20 years of my life to her, dedicating myself to her entirely, and she stamped me in the back. I gathered as much evidence from her phone as I could, and I emailed it all to myself so I could send it to the divorce attorney that I planned on contacting. I'm divorcing her, but I wanted to get back at her. I wanted to show the world who she really was. She wasn't the loving and doting soccer mom like everyone thought she was, and I wanted to rip that mask off to reveal her true colors. I put her phone back where I originally found it so I could pretend like I didn't know anything. She came back for the grocery store, about 5 hours after she left with only a few bags of groceries. I actually had a birthday coming up. Before I found any of this out, I had already been telling my wife that I wanted to have some kind of party so I could get everyone that I knew together and spend time with them. It had been quite some time since I'd seen many of our friends and my coworkers, so I thought it would be a nice opportunity to do so. My intentions for the party had completely changed after I found out she was cheating. I still threw the party. You and I made sure she invited everybody from my office, as well as all of our family members and friends. The day of the party came, and we were having a great time. Everybody was asking me how I was doing, telling my wife they were so happy that I was okay, and she was agreeing with them with a big smile on her face. I even heard her comment on how difficult the journey to my recovery had been for all of us. That was what really set me off. Hearing her take credit for my recovery when she had absolutely nothing to do with it was infuriating. I immediately turned around and called her out for it. A lot of people in the crowd were obviously a little concerned about our argument, but they weren't saying anything. They were all just listening curiously. When I noticed everybody was listening, I turned right around and explained to them that my wife wasn't there for me. Instead, she was out sleeping with a bunch of random guys and my coworker, who I pointed to when I said it. His wife looked at him very confused, then I elaborated more. I said a few quotes that were in their messages to each other, and my wife was clearly about to explode on me. My wife ended the party early and sent everyone home. The wife of my coworker poured a drink in her hair before leaving. She called her a flurry of names and walked out telling her husband that she wanted him out of the house. I told my wife that I didn't want to talk about anything. I had all the evidence that I needed, and I was already in contact with a divorce attorney. Everything in the house was under my name, and I wanted her out as soon as possible. I told her that she would be getting nothing from me, to which she replied that she was entitled to half, if not more. When the divorce battle came around, I smugly walked away with everything I owned. Because she cheated, she wasn't entitled to a dime of my money. Child custody was easy because our kids hated her for everything she did. That was never my intent, but they saw a woman who cheated on their badly injured father and didn't want anything to do with her. I couldn't blame them, though I do hope they will come around eventually to forgive her so they can have a relationship with her. As it turns out, her sister was covering for her all the nights that she said she passed out at her house. Her sister actually encouraged her to seek extramarital intimacy. Apparently, my wife had been complaining about how she didn't think we would be able to sleep together anymore. So her sister gave her some information about dating apps.